and welcome back to another video. So today I wanted to share some recommendations, and these books are books that I would sell my soul to read again for the first time. These are books that I absolutely 100% recommend. It would probably make my all-time favorites list if I had one of those made. And I think that they're definitely ones that you will absolutely love. Like I said, I would sell my soul to read these again for the first time. So if you haven't read any of these, I recommend that you absolutely pick them up. The first recommendation that I wanted to start with is a short story, and it is And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. I absolutely love this story. It is one that means so much to me. It is about a grandfather who is battling with dementia, and he is slowly approaching the end of his life. And it's also about the impact that this is having on his grandson and his son, and we see how his memories are slowly fading. The title is And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer because the way home, the way back to where his family is in his mind, gets longer. And so that's like a euphemism for his dementia, his battle with this chronic and progressive illness. We really see that discussion of dementia and aging, and all of that is in the center of the story, and it also examines a lot of family dynamics and relationships. We see the relationship that this grandfather had with his wife before she passed away, and we understand a lot of the bond between the grandfather and the grandson, and they're very close to each other. And it's also about trying to get the grandfather to reconcile with his son and try to overcome some of the differences and the issues that they face in their relationship together. It's about memory, it's about identity, it's about what holds a family together, and most importantly, it is a story of this regret and what happens when you're getting towards the end of that life, and especially when your memories are fading, so you're mentally fading before you physically fade. This is one that is really close to my heart. I love this book, but it was so heart-wrenching and made me sob. It's a very short, quick little read, but you definitely have to be in a stable mindset to read this book. I still recommend it, however, and for me it was very personal because I recently had a family member that passed after a long battle with dementia, and so it's one that is close to my heart and will probably be one that will resonate with a lot of other readers as well. So I highly recommend this book. Frederick Bachman's writing is just top tier. The next book that I have on my list is A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. This is the same writer, and it is a story of this older grumpy man who has lost his wife, and he's kind of trying to just figure out what comes next, but he's very secluded. He is very much like wants to be by himself, and he is just stays at home. He doesn't like to get involved in the community or anything, and he meets this new neighbor and forms this like relationship with her, and she tries to get him involved again in the community and gets him involved with her family. And we see that the loss of his wife has kind of taken a big toll and had a big impact on him, but this friendship with this new neighbor is kind of giving him like a new perspective on what could be to come. But the story tackles themes of grief and love and friendship and just trying to deal with all these things, especially as you're aging and you're an older person in the world. It's grief from that perspective and that lens when the most important person in your life is no longer there. So it's a very heartwarming story. It's one that I really love, and you really feel for Ove throughout the whole book. There has been an adaptation made of it called A Man Called Ove, and it is with Tom Hanks as the main character, but I don't think that it is the same level of intensity or just as good as the book. I think the book does the story so much better, so I recommend that you pick it up. And then if you're interested, you can always check out the adaptation as well, but the book is a must read. I highly recommend. And again, try to read this in a more stable mindset, not when you're struggling. This is not one of those books to read when you're not in the right space, but if you're in the right headspace, it's definitely one that will stick with you. A very poignant read that tackles some difficult topics and themes. Another book that I wish I could sell my soul to read for the first time is Unloved by Peyton Corinne. This one really struck deep with me. It is on the surface a hockey player who has this romance with his tutor, and he has some disabilities. So he has dyscalculia, he has dyslexia, and he has ADHD, and he is trying to kind of graduate from college because he's going to play for the NHL after he is done. So he wants to just finish college so he can get into that contract, and his tutor is trying to help him through it. And the story is so much deeper than that though. Like that's just on the surface level, but there is so much going on under the surface. It's not just about their romance. Yes, their romance is prominent, but it is also a story of self-love, self-discovery, and dealing with abuse and past trauma, dealing with grief. All of those are major themes of this book and major themes of all the recommendations to this point. But it has so much emotional weight and impact. Wow, when I read this book, it really struck me. I loved all the nuance in the emotions. I loved the character growth that happened for both Ro and Freddie in this one. And it's not your everyday sports romance. It's so much more than that. I highly recommend this, and I definitely need to read the first book in this series by Peyton Corinne, which I have not read yet, and it is Unsteady. But I do recommend Unloved. I think Unsteady is also going to crush me, but in the best way. Again, I wouldn't jump into this if you aren't in the right headspace, but if you are, it is a beautiful story, and the ending makes everything worth it. Like, the characters go through so much in this story, and they have so much past trauma, but you go through all of that with them, and you get such a beautiful light at the end of the tunnel. So I highly recommend this one. All right, for a little bit of a change of pace, my next recommendation is Ross Poldark, but more specifically just the entire Poldark saga. I will say the last couple of books weren't my cup of tea, but for the first 2 or 3 books of this series especially, I would sell my soul to read them again for the first time. I love this story. I've seen the PBS series Poldark as well, and it's not as good as the books, but the 2015 series also has a special place in my heart, which I'll go into in another video. But this is one that I highly recommend. It is about this captain who was serving in the Revolutionary War on the side of the British, and he's actually coming home now that the Revolutionary War is over. Everyone at home thought he was dead because he got shot in the face or something, and he has this big wound on the side of his face, and everyone thought he died because of that, so they didn't expect him to come back. But he has come back to his home of Cornwall, and he finds that things are very different. He finds that his estate is in disrepair, his father is dead, and Cornwall is not like how he left it, and he kind of has to navigate that. Also, the love of his life, Elizabeth, is now engaged to his cousin, so many things are different, and that's kind of where we kick off. The story is about him reestablishing himself in this society, but it's so much more than that. He is a friend to the commoners, so you see his relationship with the common people as well as with the middle class of the time, so these are the landed gentry people, and it's such a good, fascinating read. It's so atmospheric. You really feel like you're in Cornwall with him, and you're going through all the things with him. He's also gonna find new love and new things to look forward to, and this family saga is very epic. I highly recommend it. We follow so many fun and interesting characters, and a lot of morally gray characters in this series. I know I've mentioned it before, but I love characters that have a lot of emotional depth, and there's so much to them that you can't easily pick it out. And Ross Poldark is not your typical hero. He's a little bit of an anti-hero, but there are no purely good people or purely bad people in this series. They all have like nuanced kind of relationships with other people and so many motives that it's hard to narrow people down into a good or bad archetype. So I highly recommend this series. It's a beautiful historical fiction, and the romance in it is also beautiful, so I highly recommend it. And if you have a chance, definitely pick it up. You will not regret it. I listened to these on audio and I flew through them. I will say you can skip the last couple because they're not as good, but the first like 6 or 7 are amazing. On a very different note, another book that I would also sell my soul to read again for the first time is The Push by Ashley Audrain. This is a psychological thriller, which is not a genre I usually gravitate towards, but wow, was this one really impactful. I love the story. It follows this woman named Blythe who is a new mother, and she's kind of coping with that and trying to adjust to that reality, and she's dealing with a lot of very intense anxieties about her child and just her family's own troubled history. And so she's going through a lot of marriage trouble, a lot of issues trying to connect with her daughter, and she is very concerned about her daughter's behavior and starts to think that there's something wrong with her. But at the same time, she's also questioning her own sanity. She doesn't know if it's the daughter's behavior at fault or if she's just losing her mind because all of these very intense and just out-of-pocket things keep happening. So it's an exploration of her fears as a mother and these darker aspects of what if I fail my child? What if I'm, causing them to be a bad person? And that's a lot of like the fears and anxieties that I'm sure a lot of parents face. And I love that it is about her journey with motherhood. I don't think that there's that many books that focus on that, but you can really see that she at the very beginning is determined to be a good parent, be the mother that she never had to her child, and she just starts to think that there's something wrong with her daughter. And we really see that there's a societal expectation for her to like be the perfect wife, the perfect mom, and to do all of that and be this ideal, and the reality is far from that. So it's really interesting. There is so much that you don't know. You don't know what is the reality, what is fake, what is real. She is an unreliable narrator, and I love that about this story. There are so many themes in this book that will leave you a little bit unnerved, but definitely ones worth exploring, and I think one that you will definitely enjoy enjoy, especially if you like thrillers and suspense books, anything like that. Another book that I would sell my soul to read for the first time again is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. So Elizabeth Acevedo is a Black Latinx writer, and I love her books. I've read almost all of the books she's published. I think there's a couple of recent ones that I haven't read yet, but all of the ones that I've read by her, I've loved. And I think most of her works, if not all of them, have been young adult, so just keep that in mind. But The Poet X follows this story of this girl named Xiomara, who is a 15-year-old Dominican American girl, and she lives in Harlem in New York and is finding her voice through poetry. She's dealing with a lot of very difficult things in her life. She's a very strict religious mother, and she's also trying to cope with her own identity while also dealing with these feelings for classmates and so much more in the world. And she feels like the world is always trying to silence her, and she has so many thoughts and so many things that she wants to express, and that's why she starts writing poetry. I really empathize a lot with Xiomara and her struggles and trying to fit into this prescribed life that isn't exactly for her. She questions her faith a lot in this one, which is something that I know that a lot of people who grow up with a really strict religious upbringing do, and I really related to her in that aspect. We really see how the poetry helps her find a voice for herself when she feels like she's drowning and nobody is listening to her, and I appreciated that she found that outlet to express just all the frustration and the struggles that she's dealing with in her day-to-day life. And you really understand the conflict between her and her mom and the difficulties between the two of them when Xiomara is Dominican American, so she's not pure Dominican, but her mom is very much religiously and culturally aligned with the Dominican cultural values, which I thought that was really interesting to see how that all played out. But it's really this expression of finding yourself, finding your identity, and seeing how you can stand up for yourself in the world and still express yourself even when it feels like no one's listening. And those are feelings that I've personally had myself in the past, where I felt like I was speaking into a void and no one was hearing me. So definitely a book that I related to, one that I think that I would love to read again, and that you should read if you haven't read it, even if you don't normally read young adult fiction. My next recommendations, or books that I would sell my soul to read again for the first time, should come as no surprise, but it is The Hunger Games and Catching Fire. I loved this trilogy so much growing up, and I still find new things in it every single time I reread them. I recently reread The Hunger Games in 2024, and I did my reread for Catching Fire and Mockingjay earlier this year. So these stories are very fresh in my mind, especially since Sunrise and the Reaping recently came out. And I just really resonate with the story. I love the dystopian world. I love following Katniss's story as she is figuring out what's happening in the world around her, as she volunteers for her sister to protect her from these Hunger Games. I love just all the world development, the character development that happens in this series. And these first two books, I would sell my soul to read again for the first time. They're just ones that I can reread over and over again. And I think at this point, I've read them like 5 times at least, if not more. So definitely ones that I recommend if you haven't read this trilogy yet, you definitely need to. But I love how the story evolves. The Hunger Games are so atmospheric. You really feel like you're in there with the characters. And I love just how Katniss learns to find her own identity and to stand up for herself, and also is the spark of a rebellion and a revolution in this world that desperately needs some reform. So I really resonate with these stories, and they're very difficult reads in some aspects, but it is something that feels like it could happen in the future, so they're important to read. In that sense, they kind of remind me of 1984, but dystopian fiction can either be a hit or a miss for me, and these are very much a hit. Definitely some of my favorite books of all time, and I highly recommend reading them. Any list involving books that I would want to sell my soul to read again for the first time would not be complete without this trilogy, and I think you all know what it is, but it is The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. So it is Clockwork Angel, Prince, and Princess. This series has a special place in my heart. I love the Infernal Devices trilogy. I love the Shadowhunter world, and we really get an introduction to the world in this trilogy. We follow this girl who has been thrown into this world that she doesn't know anything about, and she has all these powers that she knew nothing about, and she's trying to cope with that. So it is her journey in this. It is a journey of her identity and figuring out who she is, learning things about her parentage that she never knew before, and also her falling in love. This is the only trilogy or the only series that I've ever read where the love triangle trope does not bother me. I love it in this trilogy, and I absolutely love the complicated dynamics of all the characters in these books. You really come to love Tessa, Jem, Will, Henry, Charlotte, all of the main characters. You come to love them in a way that they feel like your friends, they feel like your family, and I think that would definitely make you want to read this. This is a historical fantasy series, so it's set in the 1800s, at the end of the 1800s, so I love just the time period too. You really get that kind of coming through in the books, and I love all the fantasy aspects, learning about the Shadowhunters, these part human, part angel creatures monsters and all their powers and defending demons. Like, that's really cool. And you see how their powers and all of that comes to play. It is one of the series that got me back into reading after not having read in a long time. I read these back in 2019 and I've reread them since, and I love this trilogy so much. I love the Shadowhunter Chronicles as a whole, but this trilogy will hold a special place in my heart always. Another book that I would sell my soul to read again for the first time is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This book is amazing. I love the gothic elements in it. I love that we follow this scientist named Frankenstein who has created this creature and he has no control over the creature anymore. And I really like the exploration of the messages and themes of autonomy and what it means to be a good person versus a bad person and morality. It has a lot of discussions about that. And we see how this creature kind of morphs into the villain he's perceived to be because he is going to fit societal expectations. He gives up on trying to be good because he's like, no matter how good I behave, no one is ever going to see me as anything other than a monster. And I really felt for the monster in this book, so I really resonated with that. I love just the moral ambiguities in the characters in this story, and just the journey that Frankenstein and this monster go on is incredible to see. I wish I could reread this book for the first time again because I would want to experience that journey again and relive just all of the plot and just experience how Mary Shelley crafted this world again for the first time. She is an expert writer. I highly recommend this book to everyone, especially people like gothic and horror kind of books. It's definitely one that has stuck with me, and for a classic, I still think it's very accessible and one that you definitely should pick up if you haven't read it yet. The next book on my list should also come as no surprise, and it is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. This series has a chokehold on me. It's one of my all-time favorite series, and I love the first book. You really get so much from it. It is about this World War II nurse who goes on this second honeymoon with her husband after the end of the war, and they're trying to reconnect on this honeymoon in Scotland, but she ends up falling through time and she travels back to the 1700s, the 1730s specifically, and meets this Highlander and they kind of fall in love. But it is about so much more than that. The romance is important to this story, yes, but it's about her trying to figure out and navigate this new life in a very different time period and just dealing with all of the changes that come with that, and also trying to figure out how she traveled through time. I love this historical fiction fantasy book. It is super exciting. You go for such a wild ride in this one, and this whole series is amazing. Like, I cannot recommend it enough. There are some books that I love more than others, but this is definitely one that I highly recommend. You go on such a wild journey with this nurse as she adapts to the past, and I love the romance between her and Jamie in this story. Definitely a book that I could see myself reading over and over again, and one that I will always recommend. This had to be on this list because if I could re-experience the story again for the first time, I definitely would. I would want to go through all of the motions with Claire again and be confused and trying to figure out what was happening in the story, navigating all the political intrigues and the Highlander way of life before that is all destroyed, and we really get to see all of that play out. So I loved all the action and adventure in this one, as well as the romance. And then the last book in this list, and no list involving books that I would want to read again for the first time would be complete without this, and it is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I love the social commentary that Jane Austen gives in that story. You get so much about the Bennet family and kind of some of the issues with them, and you get to explore also the Bingleys and Mr. Darcy. You get thrown into Regency England and you are seeing how this way of life is, and you get thrown into that contemporary perspective because at the time that Jane Austen was writing this book, that was her reality. That was what English society was like. So I love that. It's very authentic in a way that a lot of historical fictions and historical romances just cannot be because they're written by people living in the present day. But I love it. I love the romance in the story. I love that it's a slow burn. You very rarely see slow burns in a lot of books these days, but this is like the ultimate kind of pining book, and the enemies to lovers trope is so well defined in the story. I think that's where it originated, and that's why it's such a popular trope just in general, because there are some examples like Pride and Prejudice which have just made it so good. I love all the adaptations for it. I love the story, and it is one that I wish I could re-experience again for the first time. Just diving into Lizzie's brain and seeing everything from her perspective is very interesting because you have just a limited point of view of the world from it, and you also get to see her friendship with Mariah Lucas and her relationship with her siblings. So it is about family as well as romance, and kind of the commentary that Austen has about her society, the people that she views as foolish, the people that she views as, you know, prideful, and all of her comments. And you can kind of feel like she's behind it. Every line that she wrote, she's thinking about how she perceives these people, and she wants you to know her thoughts on them, which I think is really cool. These are books that I would sell my soul to read again for the first time because they were that good. And I definitely think that if you haven't read any of these, you should pick them up. They're some of my all-time favorites in this list, and ones that that I don't think will disappoint you at all. If you like this video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe. And I would love to know if there's any books that you would sell your soul to read again for the first time, or just books that you absolutely love that you would reread over and over and over again. I'd love to hear that. And if you've made it to this point in this video, I would love like a book stack emoji just to let me know that you watched all the recommendations. But I appreciate each and every one of you that watches my videos regardless of how far you watch into it. And I appreciate you all wherever you are, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. I hope that you are doing well, and hopefully I will see you for the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a great day. Bye!